Yeah.
There we go.
We are live. Right. What's going on, folks? Folks out there in YouTube land. Got Morrison Sons custom baits. Man, he's been making some nice looking stuff.
Yeah, that's what I said. He's been slinging some plastic.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to checking some of that stuff out.
Yeah. He said he's sending, I guess he's sending everything to your house. So he didn't have my address. So
yeah, I was looking at that new that disco shad color that he's making on swim baits. It looks really good.
Yeah. This guy asked me, he's like, "You want some of them?" I'm like, "Oh yeah." That around grass water with a little clear, it's gonna be pretty good. Mr. Denny Hall in the house.
What's up, DJ? DJ's been out there fishing in the cold.
Yeah. He got himself a camera even.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he was talking to me a while back about just some GoPro stuff, and I think he's got a Yolotech stick, power stick and stuff.
That's awesome.
Got Aaron in here.
Start seeing some videos from him.
Yeah. So you got to go fishing a little bit over the weekend, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
I finally got to get out, and it was. I went. What day was that? Was it Friday? Yeah, the day after Thanksgiving. The water was definitely blown out. I mean, with that rain we had, I guess it was Wednesday. You could tell stuff was still pushed up on the bank. I mean, it was overflowing to beat hell. Just murky as hell too. I thought, well, being murky, maybe I'll get away with a few other things. But I threw a jerk bait for probably a good hour and a half. Wasn't getting nothing. I mean, it was bad. And I didn't have any bright colors. I needed your clown color.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I needed, but I didn't have anything. So I went out deep I threw the hay rig for probably 2 hours, and it was just nothing. I could go through the bait schools and feel them hitting it, but I could not get anything.
Really?
No, it was. I mean, I looked around. I went through 2 different bait schools that were out. One was off the point we were talking about last time, which I kept getting hung in the trees. So I finally went to the other one, and I still couldn't get bit. Once that sun came up a little bit, stuff warming up just a little bit, and I seen a little bit of something playing up by the bank on a real steep drop. So I went over and started hitting that, and about 8 to 10 foot of water started hitting a couple. That was it. So
what was the water temp?
48.
48. Okay. Yeah, it's a little chilly.
Yeah.
It's a little chilly. I went over to Cedar. We fished a little tournament over there Sunday.
Yeah, I was actually going to go, and I just didn't get to do it.
And it was like 52 in the morning. It got up to about 53. Man, it was cold. It was 27 degrees.
When we started out. Bet. Yeah.
Man, I was jackhammering out there. But it got up to 50, and after about those first couple hours,
yeah,
it was pretty nice. There wasn't much wind, which man, that makes such a big difference. You got 27 degrees and some 10-mile-an-hour wind.
Brutal. Yeah,
that's when you get the ice on your guides.
Yeah. Denny, just to answer your question, yes, I was at Perry. Aaron's still COVID at his house.
Oh,
man,
no, man.
Keep it on that side of the river, man.
Sorry to hear that.
Oklahoma's worst anger. What's up, dude?
Saw Tom in here.
Yeah, I was gonna say I missed a couple here. David's in the house. Johnny B.
You got Isaac in here?
Yeah.
What's up, Isaac?
Isaac's in there. Making a new shag color right now. That's Morrison's son. Bass RX in here. Tom's in here. Let's see what else we got. We got Doyle in here. Larry Lee.
Got Avery.
Mr.
What's
Avery Burley. Can anyone comment on the Lawrence Ghost? Well, we'll find out here. If anybody knows anything about the Lawrence Ghost yet, I can tell you my pocketbook says I will not know anything about it for a while yet.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good stuff about it. I've heard going from the Ultrex to the Lowrance, the foot pedal is quite a bit different. It's just it's just got a different feel to it. It takes a little bit. I was talking to a guy down at Lake of the Ozarks probably a couple months ago when we fished. I think we fished that super tournament down there, and he had a new Camus, and he had Lowrance on there, the Ghost, and his prior tournament was the Ultrex, and he said it's taken him a little bit to get used to it. He said it's super fast though. I mean, it'll almost put a wake off. It'll almost throw a wake on the back of your boat. So, no problems with that. It's got plenty of power. So yeah, this is going to be a great stream, guys. It's starting to load up. We're going to get Terry in here shortly, and
Oh
yeah. What's up? So when Terry gets on here, any questions you guys have got about anything, he's very, very knowledgeable, obviously, and he's great at explaining stuff. He's a really good teacher. So
Yeah.
anything out
Looks
there.
like Bappy said ghost is the best investment I've made in the past 3 years when it comes to fishing. Well, 20% off tackle warehouse. I still have Minn Kota Edge. Yeah, Avery, we know all about that Minn Kota Edge, don't we? Things been nothing but issues. Like I said, though, since I did that upgrade that to the head, I have had 0 issues out of it since then. I'll tell you what, my battery life has been better. It runs smoother. I don't know what the difference was, but it helped out a bunch. I wouldn't suggest getting one, but still, it's better than what it was.
We got Shirley in here. We got Ron in here. T. Harris, what's up, man? Yeah, Jonathan's got the Ultrex. He's got that Ultrex on a 16-foot aluminum.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's man. That might be my next purchase. I'm kind of torn between that or going with the live scope. I'm not really sure. I need a bigger trolling motor.
Just make sure the live scope is you're able to take it on and off between your boats, like your 2 boats, my boat.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I have enough money to rig everything up like that though. This stuff's expensive. The bite at Cedar was kind of slow. We ended up, I think, getting 4th place, and first place was like 13 pounds. And if you guys haven't been over to Cedar before, it's got a slot. So you got a 14, 18 slot. In that tournament, you can keep 2 over 18 and 3 under 14. So it was, I think Big Bass was like 6'3", and then there was another 6-pounder. But it took 13 pounds to win. And second was like 10.6, and then third was 10.4, and we had 10.2. So we were right there.
Yeah,
right there.
Nothing to complain about there.
But it was slow. It was a grind. The frog bite's pretty much over. The water level came up last week. We had some rain, and it kind of blew all those mats out. There were some pretty good mats, and the mat bite was going on.
I'll say it rained. I don't know what you got. I don't know what they got over there, but I know here we got quite a bit. I mean, it overflowed my pond. It's actually full, and I can tell I can see everywhere that I've mowed grass is under about 2 foot of water now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we got quite a bit. So
I went to Kincaid about a week and a half ago, and they really got some rain over there. It was really up. But the water is a little bit more stained. It's kind of got that nice color in between the 2 islands down there. It's still probably 4 foot visibility, but it's got a little bit of color. And then all the way back in the creek, it's about 1.5 foot visibility. But yeah, it was a finesse kind of deal for us. We had to really slow down and just work for the bites. It was slow for us. I don't know what everybody else caught their fish on. They don't ever tell us what they catch them on. I do a video so you guys know exactly what I caught my fish on. Yeah, nobody else does video. They won't tell you.
Yeah, Gary said it's time to get the ice fishing gear out. You be quiet, Gary.
Man, it was cold. We got snow. Did you get snow up here? A little bit?
Yeah,
some
it did.
flurries and stuff?
Just flurried a little bit. My daughter called me this morning. She was on her way to work and said on the way to Chester, she said it was coming down pretty good. But
my brother called me from St. Louis, and he said they're snowing up there too.
Really?
So.
Yeah. Let's see. We use remote only. Getting used to, but love it. Yeah, Avery said he's planning on getting the one with the remote so he can sip his coffee while he goes pushes around Cedar.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Yeah, I mean, I think that brushless trolling motor is the new thing. I mean, the Garmin's got one, and everybody's going to be going that way. They're a lot more quiet, very, very energy efficient. But I don't have one, so I can't totally comment too much on it. That's just what I've heard.
So we
got Small Water Charters in here. I've been watching some of his videos. He's got some that place down there is pretty sweet down there in Florida where he fishes at. It's nice.
I'll just text Terry, so he said he's ready. So we'll be jumping on here in a second. Let me get lined up there.
We got 2G in here.
And
George is in here.
Just to let you guys know, I will have a video coming out probably Monday. So it's been a long overdue video, we'll say that.
Whitewell Fishing says the Ned rig, tube, and drop shot got it done for me on Saturday. Sweet.
Well, see, I've seen he was posted some pretty good pictures there on Instagram.
Yeah, he had a really good day. He was fishing the pond, I think. He had about 18 pounds or so on a spinnerbait. Saw that video.
Dave said he's ready to hit up some water with you. He's pretty cold, and he's got your scissors.
Okay, cool, man. Yeah, Dave, I'll get up with you real soon. We'll go do some fishing, man.
Gary said $200 rebate on live scope. What's coming?
Yeah, maybe Terry can talk a little bit about that because there's been some blurbs out there with the new Humminbird forward-facing sonar that's coming out, and Lowrance is trying to up their game. They better, they're behind the A ball on a lot of stuff, so they need to get with it a little bit.
Who's that? Mike Morphle.
Marfel,
Morphle,
gunslinger.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking for that. Mike's a guest on the
Second
Amendment radio up there out of St. Louis, and he was on there just a little bit the other day. And I think the exclusive podcast was supposed to come out today, but I don't know if it dropped. I was looking for it, but go check out the Second Amendment podcast. It's a good time. It's out of the St. Louis area, and they do a little bit of everything on there. They talk hunting, talk fishing, just a whole hodgepodge of things. But I'm looking forward to hearing that one, Mike. Hopefully it'll be out tomorrow. I can check it out.
Yeah, Aaron said he's still waiting on a call for his Ultrex. See what's going on with it.
What happened to his Ultrex?
There was something going on with it.
Okay.
He had said it, I don't know, probably 2 weeks. No, it might be longer than that.
Yeah,
Bob's in the house. Hey, Bob. I haven't seen you in a while.
Hey, what's up, Bob? 2G says he put a weedless prop on his 30-pound truss trolling motor. It works way better. Yeah, that's one thing I do that I kind of learned the last couple of years is that 2-blade is a lot better in grass than that 3-blade. You lose a little bit of speed, but you don't have to clean off that blade near as much. It's almost a necessity if you're fishing. Like I know you're over there at Cedar sometimes.
Yeah, Aaron said it wouldn't steer.
M squared. That's right, DJ.
Something else I've seen up there. Oh, where was that? Oh, you're talking about that weedless prop too. I tell you what, the one I had on my motor guide I loved, that 3-blade prop. It seemed like it had a lot less effort to go places, but like you said, you get into any grass or anything and it was done. That's the worst part about it.
Well, the one I got was a little piece of machine metal that had a sharp blade on it, and it goes on each, I think it's called like the grass demon or grass goat or something. It mounts on the head of your
Jeez.
Well, it mounts on the head of your trolling motor, and it's got like a razor blade. And as your prop catches that grass, it cuts it off, and that's a really nice thing to get.
Yeah, I didn't have that.
Yeah, I bought the Gen 3 that I bought a Gen 3 9. The guy was a machinist, and he sent me a couple of those that he made, and I put them on my old trolling motor, and they made a big difference.
Well, I'm sure.
And I need to probably look at some.
Producer Chad's last show.
Yeah, their producer up there, he moved on to, I don't know where he went, but he's actually going to be on the podcast too. So we'll find out the details on that.
Gotcha. Says took the Ultra to the shop this morning, needs new trim motor. So it'll be done tomorrow. Great service.
Yeah, over there, I've been finding over there at Cedar, all the shad.
So you're going to Arizona.
Arizona. Okay, gotcha. All those shad are out deep right now. So they're all out in that. They pulled out of that grass, and they're all out there in about 17 to 23. If you pull out off the bank, just about anywhere in the lake, you just see huge balls of shad.
Yeah, that's what I was running into.
And I tell you what's crazy is, where are all those shad at in the summertime? Because you're fishing the same type of stuff. It amazes me. Are they just, you're not seeing them on the bottom. I don't know where they all go, but it seems like this time of year, in that late fall into winter, you start seeing huge balls of shad everywhere. And we caught some fish out of them. That's fun. That's kind of what I'm working on this year. I'm gonna be doing a lot of that underspin, spoon, A-rig, that kind of stuff. Trying to stay out off the bank and figure all that stuff out.
I did lose 2 underspins. I was fishing out by those trees I was telling you about.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to get through them, but that was a pain in the butt. But like I said, they're there. But
yeah, that's right,
you
Jonathan.
can sit there and watch them on your sonar the whole time.
That's why I've been thinking about getting that live scope. It's just exactly for that reason. Just figuring out which way those fish go. You scan them on your side scan, you find them, and then you turn around, drop a waypoint, come back around, start fishing them, and you get a few bites, and then you kind of lose it, and then you got to go. I usually I'll usually troll up to that same area and see if I see them. If I don't, I'll kind of go to the right a little bit, and I'll kind of go to the left.
Yeah.
Sometimes if they move, say they move 100 yards, you don't see them anymore. So you got to get back on the big motor and do a little idle and stuff. But it's fun.
Yeah.
It's something different.
Bob wants to know what size your John boat is. He wants to go into cover Perryville waters.
Yeah, I have an.
There's no fish in Perryville, Bob. Just don't worry about it.
Bob, I got an Express 1650. And it's a really wide boat, not just the bottom of it, but the way it tapers up. And it's a flat john. And it's been a great boat. I really, really like it. I've got that Tohatsu 99 on there. It's 4-stroke. Great motor as well. I'm really, really happy with that. See, my old boat was a 1442 Alumacraft. And I don't know if I could go back and fish out of that. I mean, at the time I was used to it, but going from that to what I have now, just huge, huge difference. So it's pretty sweet. Yeah, Avery, that was sick that Patrick Walters put on a clinic with that jerkbait. That's probably, I don't know if there'll be any more jerkbait fish out there on that standing timber after this winter, because everybody's going to be doing that. There was a guy I was listening to, English Happy Hour, which is another podcast. It is, can't remember who the, there's 3 or 4 guests on there. Josh Bertrand is the main guy on there. But he had a tech on there today, like a Mercury tech, that he was actually worked at Bass Pro Shops. I'm not sure what office or whatever, or what location. But he was talking, he asked him, has he seen an uptick in the amount of Garmin live scopes that he's been installing on boats? And he said, hands down, everybody is getting those. It's amazing.
So I know when Terry gets on there, I definitely want to ask him what his thought is on that going into 2021.
Yeah, so it would have been nice to buy some stocks in Garmin if they sell it in public marketplace.
I know when they brought it out at ICAST, I was checking out then with the ghost and everything. It's just, they were talking about how quiet it was and everything else. And they were putting it down in the water in the test tank and everything. And I mean, the thing was super quiet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that live scope is something else. And we talked last week a little bit to Luke about that.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about how it's your best friend and it's your best enemy at the same time. You can get so focused on following those fish around that you forget to actually fish.
So now over at Cedar, I don't get over there in the winter that much at all, really. Do you see a lot of that, the shad die off? I started seeing that already at Perry. That's what I was wondering. Yeah.
Did you? Well, according to the biologist that we had on here,
Sean Hirsch.
Yeah, Sean Hirsch. He said that most of those shad over there are gizzard shad, which I thought they were thread fins. So I think the gizzard shad has a little bit more cold water tolerance for colder water. But I don't.
And that's what's in the gizzard shad are what's in Perry County, and they die off every year. Now, not a big abundance. Now, if we get a freeze and that water freezes, that's when you see them just. I mean, that one cove would be covered in shad all over top of water. But the thing is, I don't see a lot of the small ones. It's always the big ones.
Maybe they're just old and stressed out.
I mean, those things are. I mean, they're huge.
Yeah.
I mean, they're big gizzard shad. That's what kills me about people that say, "Oh, there's no good fish in there."
They're
you fish that lake enough, you'll figure out there's some good ones in there.
That's a good question for Terry when he gets on here. I mean, I would think just that those are possibly end of their life gizzard shad, and the stress of that winter just took them out. They couldn't. They weren't ready for another winter.
So Morris said, "Do you think they'll ban live scope?"
I don't think they will. I think it's already out there, and these electronics companies are so invested in bass fishing that to try to go back on it, I don't think it's going to be. I don't think it's going to happen.
It's no different than. I mean, when they started coming out with better electronics, people could see better. They come out with the 360, you could see all around and this and that, and the side imaging and everything. The side imaging was huge, and people really didn't realize how big of a game changer that was, until I bet it was probably 6 years later before people actually started to figure out what they were actually looking for, going by, these brush piles and these docks, and they could see up underneath of them, seeing the pilings of where these fish were actually staged at, and, the offshore cover and everything. I mean, it was a big game changer then. I strongly think that this is even a bigger game changer, but I don't think they're going to ban it. I think they're just going to keep going with it.
Well, one thing
next?
you got to remember, you can give. It's not just the technology; it's the person behind the technology. It's the fisherman that takes the time. Most of these guys, you hear, well, we ought to take all the electronics away and just go old school, just pattern fishing and stuff. Well, a lot of those guys that were really good in winning tournaments with the live scope will still win the tournaments without it because they just have a natural ability to find fish. They've got a good solid game plan. They got good instincts. They're just, a lot of them are just prodigies at fishing.
Yeah. And like Lucas said, it could hurt them. I mean, they might get stuck on something. They think it's a 10-pounder and stay there for an hour longer than when they normally would have never stayed there. So it could hurt them too.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of like bed fishing.
Yeah.
You're sitting there looking at a 10-pounder. Well, you've been
Unless
looking at fish for an hour.
Snag them. I mean, but.
Yeah. It's like, how long do you chase that fish? I know Matt Pamrack from Bass Talk Live, he's been kind of on a crappie fishing kick. And there's some guys that taught him how to target a bigger than average crappie, say a 3-pound crappie, and follow that crappie around for hundreds and hundreds of yards. Just keep poking a jig in front of him, following, cast and just pester the crap out of it.
Eventually you're going to piss him off.
Yeah. But he's talked about actually following a crappie for 15 minutes. So that's one. I mean, I don't know. That's fun. Fun.
I guess. I don't know.
But I think bottom line is there's in that same tournament at Fork where Patrick Walters won, there was, I'm just guessing here, but I would say 75% of the rest of the field probably had the live scope. Maybe 50 to 75%. I don't know whether they talk about it or not. There's a lot of those guys that have it, and they still lost by 30 pounds. So it's not just having that technology. It's learning how to use it and putting the time in to know what you're looking at. And then it's also about the bait selection. I've heard some people referring to that tournament and saying that some people did find, those bigger fish out there suspended around that timber. And Patrick Walters even said this too. He threw all different kinds of swim baits. I mean, he was throwing Huddlestons. He was throwing just bass tricks, Scottsboro tackle, all the hollow bellies. Could not get them to react to any of the normal baits. And then for some reason, they just wanted a jerk bait. So you could have those other tournament fishermen with the same type of technology out there find those fish and try their confidence baits, and it doesn't work, and they give up on them. And that's really frustrating thing with suspended fish. I run across that a lot, especially at these lakes over here in Southern Illinois. You find those suspending fish, and you can't get them to bite. They're just that your bait's going right through them. You've scanned them, you've seen them on your trolling motor, on your down scan, you backed up off of them. You're counting your bait down. You're throwing a crankbait that gets down to the same depth as them. You're going right through them and you're not catching them. Maybe you go through 20 different baits and maybe they'll fire on one, but eventually if you don't get any results, you move on to something else. But
yeah, like Ron's got a good point there too. He says, I don't want today's technology to interfere with teaching the sport to the youth. Live scope's here to stay, but we still need to learn the basics first, which is absolutely right. I mean, I don't know. I think you're going to see both sides of that, Ron. I think you're going to see those guys that are maybe not professional fishermen but bigger tournament fishermen trying to get their kids into it more. I think they're going to probably try to lean them more towards learning that stuff because they're going to think it's just going to advance from there. So I don't know. I guess I could see both ways. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, these graphs and this technology is such an integral part of the sport anyway. Now it's almost like, back when we started, we learned our basic things. I think the electronics now are a basic thing, but there's definitely still staples that you need to learn.
Yeah.
Really just how to locate the fish. That to me, that's
and just
the hardest
when
thing.
I'll say, and just when you think you figured out the electronics, you could do one different thing and find out a whole different scenario there. And there's Mr. Bolton right there. So we'll get him in here in just a second. Right before we do that, Ron, Denny had an answer or a question up here for you. He wanted to know when they were shutting down Egypt for the plant. So if you could answer him on that, you'll know more about that than anybody. So,
I think they're still.
Still
Here we go.
there. So roll it up here a little bit.
What's going on, Terry?
Hey, how you guys doing?
We are doing good. We're just kind of warming up the show here, just running over some comments, and we've already got lots of questions for you. So looking forward to tonight. I appreciate you coming on here, man.
No, thank you for having me on.
Yeah.
So I guess while we're on the topic and we're already kind of going through it, what's your thoughts going into 2021 on the live scope being used throughout the field there?
Just this last week, I'm a little bit old school, so I went last Saturday. Me and Jason Seelock went crappie fishing, and I actually got to see it in action, crappie fishing for the first time last Saturday. And so this past Saturday, I went and borrowed Jason's boat and went out and played around with it, crappie fishing. And I find it interesting. It's going to take me a little bit to get used to it, to figure out how to utilize it. I think there's a lot of guys that's been using it for a while that really have a better handle on it. But I think on certain bodies of water, I think it's really a game. It really can help your bass fishing. Now, I don't know how sold I am on it here on Kentucky Lake and the Tennessee River. We're just now entering a period here where the fish start to suspend. Jerk baits and those things. We're just starting in this water temperature here. So I'm really curious to get out here. Because I found some pretty good groups of fish about this time last year that I could catch with a jerk bait. And I'm kind of curious to see if I can utilize it any on the Tennessee River. But certain lakes, I think it's going to be very important. It's just going to take me getting used to it, I think.
Gotcha. Do you think there's going to be a problem with telling the difference between bass and the carp out there?
No, you can tell the difference. I mean, it's kind of like down imaging and side imaging. Well, side imaging, it's harder, but down imaging, you can tell very easily what's a carp and what's not. I kind of sort of have a general understanding, and now granted, I've only looked at it a couple days, so I'm by far not the expert, but the carp they'll have a much brighter, as they go across the screen, almost a diamond. They'll get a diamond shaped look to them. I noticed when they went across on the live scope.
Gotcha.
So what's the state of Kentucky Lake right now? Most of the viewers are within driving distance, and a lot of them have went down there and fished, fairly frequently. A lot of them have houses and stuff down there, and the fishing just been really tough the last 3 or 4 years. So give us a really good positive update.
Well, I mean, the lake's coming back, and I've said, I kind of noticed a decline in Kentucky Lake long before I think a lot of people did. And I started seeing things change and happen, and I started questioning it, and people started telling me, oh, well, Terry, you're gone all the time. You're just not fishing the lake. It's as much now. It's just changing. You're not keeping up with it. And I was like, now, wait a minute. I don't understand why, I've fished the lake since the 70s, and it's like, why all of a sudden they don't do the things they've done for 30 years? And that's because the bait was changing. There was no bait out there, and they were changing just because their habitat had changed. And I think, I said all along that 2021 was going to be a much better year, and we've seen that, through 2020 was a very difficult year, and so was, 2019 was a very difficult year. But I think we're going to see a lot better fishing here next year. I still say we're 2022, 2023 from it being back to what we all want it to be. But the lake's definitely on a rebound. And, right now, from now through, I always said some of the best, if you really want to make a fishing trip to Kentucky Lake, now this little cold spell now will probably help edge it along, but generally the first 14 days of December, in my opinion, are some of the best bass fishing. The fish really group up, but this little cold snap that came in here in the last 24 hours will probably, I know last year, think it was kind of happened Thanksgiving weekend, but we had a snow before Thanksgiving and kind of helped get that water temperature down. And this will do the same. I'm going to say over the next 2 weeks, we're going to see some really good bass fishing here. I know the best fishing trip I had on Kentucky Lake all of 2019, I had at this time a year ago. So there's a lot more fish out there, I think, than what we're catching. We got a lot of short fish, but things are getting better. We got a good crop, a young crappie coming on. We got a good crop of young bass. I just think we got to give it a little more time.
Gotcha. Now, with everybody taking out the carp down there, with them big boats and everything else, do you see that helping quite a bit?
It is starting to help. I know I watched a guy here Saturday run a net here in the bay that I live in, and I think I watched it. I mean, I heard him say he thought he would have somewhere around 3,600 pounds. And he said the first time he came in here, I think he got like 7,200. So but I was amazed when I watched him run that net. And I don't live in a real big bay, about how many were jumping the net, how many of those carp were actually getting over the net that he wasn't catching. But that's one thing in the last year I've seen more people fishing for them. I don't notice them as much as I did, say, 2-3 years ago. Don't get me wrong, there's still way too many out there, but it is starting to have some positive effect. And I don't think we're never going to be able to get rid of all of them. We're going to have to learn to live with them. But hopefully things, the guys will still keep fishing for them, and to where they can make a living or make money fishing for them. And maybe, I'd love to see a few more people out there fishing for them, but we'll just have to kind of see how that goes.
Yeah. So are you seeing more on average? Are you seeing more keeper quality bass now than you did, say, last year? Are they, just that 15-inch class fish?
A lot of it's at 15-inch class limit. There's just not a lot of big bass in here right now. Not like we all got accustomed to. We really got spoiled. But there is a lot of 14 to 15-inch bass, and 14 3/4, 14 1/2. So we have a really bright future. And that's why I say next year, I think you're going to see a lot more limits caught on Kentucky Lake. Now, albeit a lot of them probably aren't going to weigh 11 or 12 pounds. But I still think we're 2022, 2023 from it really being back to where I think we'll start seeing more 3-pounders, and then I think we'll start to see more groups of fish again that will possibly get back out on ledges and structure and schools of fish. I think we're going to see more of that, but I still think next year is going to be better, but I still think we're 2, maybe 3 years out from it really being back to what we really want it to be. But it is getting better. And it'll probably, and of course, I think it'll probably happen faster than what I'm guessing, because Mother Nature seems to have a great way of healing itself.
Yeah, that's right. Mother Nature takes care of itself. For you guys out there don't know, I was able to fish with Terry the first time I fished, well, the only time I fished with him, but it was in a BFL in the Super Tournament. I think it was 2017, and on Kentucky Lake in the LBL division in September, I believe. And I remember, the Tennessee river impoundments are really notoriously tough. And I remember sitting in probably like 38th place, and I think they take 45 to the regional. And I really needed a decent boat draw. And when I got the text and it was Terry, I was like, sweet. At least I'll know I'm going to be in a boat with somebody that's going to be around some fish, and I'll get the opportunity to, to catch a fish. And sure enough, I think it was about 9 o'clock. I caught a small, like 15.5-inch keeper on a spinnerbait. And I think you ended up in 3rd place that day, but I got to net the big bass of the tournament out of your boat. It was like a 5.7.
Mm-hmm.
But that was in 2017. And that's when I remember the bite seemed to be getting quite a bit tougher down there. Just, obviously I haven't been on the lake near as long as you have, but I think I fished 5 seasons down there in the LPL division. And I remember those first couple of seasons, like 2015, 2016, it just seemed like you caught a lot of fish. You pretty much, even as a co-angler, a lot of times you were bringing in 3 or 4 keepers. It wasn't too terribly difficult. And then I remember 2017, it seemed like it was a lot tougher from the back of the boat to put, to put some keepers in there. And that's, for me personally, that's when I kind of remember it starting to get a lot tougher.
Yeah, 2017, it was a pretty good spring and it was a pretty good summer and it was a pretty good September right in there, I remember. And then as it went on, it just like fish vanished. And I've never seen such an abrupt, that's what I never have figured out. What happened from 17 to 18? I've never, that still boggles my mind about, it's like there were bass that just vanished, out of the lake, so that definitely was very strange, something I'd never seen, and, and I think a lot of that too is, we've had a lot of things, we've had some really bad year class spawns, far as bass, crappie, bait fish. I mean, it got to where you couldn't hardly find any bait fish. I mean, I've seen, one thing that used to always happen here in October was, the last 30 minutes before dark, the shad would come up along the bank in October. And usually it'll start in September, sometimes as early as the end of August, but those bass will feed on them. And a lot of times in October, the best bass fishing is the last 30 minutes before dark, you can see them breaking and, and it got to even where there in 18, 19, you didn't see that. Very rarely. And you didn't see any bass feeding. And man, this year, at least every evening, I could walk down here on my point the last 15, 20 minutes before dark, and I could catch, 2 to 4 or 5 bass. Now, albeit they, one or two might be keepers some nights, they all may be short, but I was catching bass where the previous falls for the last, say, 18, 19, I couldn't go down there and catch a bass. I never saw any. So that's a positive sign. I'm starting to see things that always used to happen are starting to come back.
Yeah. One of the questions we got on here is from Ron. He was asking how are the carp affecting the shad at Kentucky right now?
Well, that's something I can't really say. I mean, I know, the shad population's really coming back. We've got a lot more bait in here this year than we've had since probably 2016, 15, so I think the carp did have an effect on the shad population. That big spawn the carp had here in 15 probably really helped eliminate a lot of those shad that their survival rate. And that's just me guessing. I'm not a biologist, but I think they did have an effect on it. But I think by their numbers starting to go down some, it's allowing some of these other young shad and stuff to make it and survive, because basically the little shad and the carp are competing for that same zooplankton or zooplankton, excuse me. And that I think that's where those carp affect the shad is, they're competing for the same thing the shad are trying to eat to get bigger.
Yeah. TJ Harris, he wanted to know, he said, have they increased the stocking of the bass to set off the impact of the carp?
Tennessee's done. I think Charlie Ingram called me, I think back in the spring, and he got together with some people, and I know out of Paris, I think that was more of a, I don't know if that was a TWRA thing, but they did do some stocking, I think, from Cypress Creek to, down there south of Big Sandy. They did do some stocking this year of the Florida strains, the F1s, back, I think it was, did they do it I'm not sure if it was the end of April or first week of May.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. I can't remember when it was, though.
I think I did. Yeah, I remember seeing the truck pull it in and dumping.
I think they did something like 300,000 fingerlings. And Charlie talked to me about that, about what he was doing, what they were trying to do. So now Kentucky has not done that, but I know there has been some sections in Tennessee that there has been some. I don't know if that's been, I believe that's all been kind of some of it may not basically TWRA, but backed with some other funds.
Mm-hmm. Are you seeing any grass anywhere in the lake?
No, I'm not seeing any. And that's another thing. That's something that, the lake's very clean right now. The visibility here, especially on the north end of this lake, is, probably 3.5 foot, maybe getting close in some places, 4 foot visibility. So that, I'd love to see it come back. That's really one of the things that made it what it was. And, And that would definitely be a big shot in the arm to us if we could get some grass back. But I haven't seen any this year.
Yeah, I hate that. It seems like when you had a couple of those winters, I can't remember the year, maybe I want to say like 2018, 2017, 2018, when the water they were running like 200, 230, 240 for
Yeah.
2 or 3 months at a time. It seems like that's when all that grass got ripped out, and
Yeah, I think it was 2016. Was that 15 or 16?
you might be right
15.
somewhere in there.
I remember that January. You up here on the north end of this lake, they had run so much current. They're right around the first of the year, right around January 1st. There were just lines of grass. Matter of fact, they were running so much you couldn't even throw a crankbait on the main lake for all the floating hydrilla. And I really thought that would help spread it throughout the system. And, the next spring it would probably take hold and root. Maybe some of it would lay there dormant, but I was wrong.
Yeah, I know. That's puzzling to me because you would think some of those bays down there, say south of 68 Bridge and down there by Paris, New Johnsonville, some of those bigger bays that weren't affected by the current as much. I'm always wondering why there wasn't some grass that would have survived down there.
Well, and that another thing we have a large population of, other than silver carp, is we have a very highly large number of black carp, grass carp. That's another problem we have here. That's another. I mean, everybody says carp, and everybody thinks about the jumping ones, but we also have a grass carp problem, and that's no good with grass, because if you do get any grass and a sprig comes up, they run over there and eat it. So that's another problem we have, is we have too many black carp in here also. So that's another thing we got to get under control.
Do you think they're taking those out with the other carp too?
I don't know. And I haven't really talked to these guys that much that are fishing for them. That'd be a good question to ask some of them. I'm assuming they're catching some of those in those nets. I mean, they're actually. I've watched what they do, and they'll net off these bays, and they'll go back and they'll start in the shallow water, and they'll rev their engines and beat on the side of the boat, make a lot of noise. They can actually, those silver carp are pretty skittish, and I know they can kind of herd them and drive them out toward those nets. Now, those other carp, I'm not sure.
Huh. Well, what Wade wants to know, you're talking about largemouth. How's the smallmouth fishing?
Well, that's one thing, I've not, and of course, I haven't got to bass fish here in probably over a month. Of course, I don't have a boat right now. I'm waiting on a new boat. But, we've got a big group of small, last year, there's a lot of smallmouth in this lake, probably the most I've seen in here as far as numbers since the 90s. And I'm looking for smallmouth over the next 2 to 3 years to really shine here. I mean, I believe you're going to go back to seeing tournaments that are just won strictly with smallmouth. I think they're still kind of like the largemouth. They're still coming. They got to grow up a little bit. I still think we're a year or two, a couple years away. But I think you're going to see Kentucky Lake back to the way it was in the 90s when, we used to see those, 5 smallmouth limits that weighed 24, 25 pounds. I think we're going to see that again.
That's nice. Have you know?
It's good to hear.
Yeah, I love the smallmouth. I don't get to catch them enough. Have you noticed? Are you still able to catch bass in the same areas you were, say, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago prior to the carp, or have you noticed that they shift around in the areas that they use now?
Yes, they do. They've been shifting. Well, they've really been shifting around for really long before we kind of came to an abrupt stop. I've been seeing a shift for, Lord, 10, 15 years. There was ledges that, I mean, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 years ago, there was ledges that there would be bass on them always from June till September. And all of a sudden it got to where they didn't even get on them anymore. You couldn't catch a fish on them. And you would see carp on them. The only thing I can figure is the carp affected the bait. The bait didn't get there anymore. Now, was that because of the carp? I don't know. But prior to the carp, I mean, there would be carp on them. And I think that's really basically what happens. Those carp have affected where the bait goes, and so the bass are just going where the bait is.
Yeah.
All right. So I got a good question here for you. I know you're a huge spinnerbait guy. I get it. Would you rather fish
Yep.
ledges or up in the bushes?
What's that?
Would you rather fish ledges or up in the brush?
Man, that's a tough one. You know, what would my preference be? Would I rather ledge fish or fish bushes? I don't know. I mean, I like them both. I'd rather fish bushes, but that's just because I've spent so many years ledge fishing. I get burnt out on it, and I can actually. I still one of my it's my favorite thing is to fish shallow, and because it's a little more. A lot of times I can see what I'm fishing. But I don't know. I think it's just because I've done so much ledge fishing through the years, I get burnt out on it at times.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't get that opportunity to flip those bushes all year long on Kentucky Lake,
Right, exactly. A lot of times we only have it.
Right.
Yeah, we only have like a good, like this year we had some pretty good fishing there for about 10 to 14 days. And then that was about it,
So 360, is that magic mark when the water starts getting in the bushes?
360 is now. I mean, actually, it's even better if it's 361, 362. And a lot of that's because our buckbrush line, used to at Summer Pool at 359, the actual old buckbrush line used to grow out to 357. But now, because of so many years and the water being up and buckbrush and stuff can handle being in water, but after so many period of time, it can kill it. So our buckbrush line has slowly crept back. So 59, yeah, there's some in the water, but really it takes 360, 61, really 61 and a half now is prime, get ready, get the net kind of fishing. But 360 is really what you want to see nowadays.
Okay. Yeah, you were talking about the ledges and the fish not using them as much. First couple times I went to Kentucky Lake, my buddy Jerry had a trailer in Bee Springs, and we used to idle right out there in those ledges, those community hole ledges right outside of Bee Springs. It seemed like they always had fish, and they haven't been there lately. So hopefully someday.
There was a lot used to. There was just hundreds of thousands of fish that lived out there, and then that was another place that all of a sudden, the territory those fish lived in got smaller and smaller and smaller. And that didn't make, and then all of a sudden, there's one place to fish out there, which didn't make sense to me.
Huh. Yeah. You think any of it has to do with just the amount of attention that Kentucky Lake has drawn as far as tournaments and stuff like that? And everybody, like Gabe just said, it's a community hole. And with social media now and everything else, I mean, it's really blowing those holes up.
Oh yeah, I mean, we're all guilty of it. I mean, we all have to take our hand in some of this. I mean, you can, we built this lake up, and we had so many tournaments, and this was such a destination lake for people to come to, and people read about it and heard about it, and it was great. It was a great one of the top 10 lakes in the country. But I think it's a combination of things. I think we all had a hand in its demise. I'm guilty too. I made a lot of great videos here, and I made a lot of money fishing, made a lot of top 10s and ever starts, and had a lot of people in FLWs and stuff. I had people follow me, and every time you would find something new and you would make a cut, you draw people to it. Well, they're going to fish it after that. It's just part of the game. And, as those places became more popular, those fish got pressured more, it pushed them around, moved them, it changed them. And, and I think that we all had a part in it, I mean, and now the lake has kind of hit a reset button. There's not the tournaments here, and there's not as many people coming, and the fishing's going to come back, and it's going to get better. But really, maybe right now, this is what Kentucky Lake needs. It needs a little bit of a break, and I drove to Lake of Egypt in June this year and had one of the best fishing trips I had all year in June on Lake of Egypt, just because I want to go catch a bunch, and which I told my wife we were driving home. I said I never in a million years thought I would leave Kentucky to drive to Southern Illinois in June, and I caught more bass in Southern Illinois than I catch on Kentucky Lake. But I did, so.
Yeah, I think we're starting to kind of see some of that pressure come to Southern Illinois too. It's, there's a lot of Great Lakes there, and
Sure.
for Gabe and I, it's an hour and a half drive to most of them, but it's better than a 2.5-hour drive to Kentucky Lake, or we got, most of the big lakes around us are about 2 hours or more or better.
Yeah. I think it was, what was it, Daisy? Would it take us an hour to get there, a little over an hour? About an hour and 15 minutes from my house to Lake of the Egypt.
Oh, so, well, that's the same drive for me.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, it was about the same, and we went up there in June and, caught a ton of bass on a worm and, on a topwater bait. And I was like, it was kind of fun. It was, it was fun. I'd idle around, look at something, say, man, that looks good. Turn around and see him, throw it out there and catch 5 or 6. And I went, hey, I remember how to do this,
Yeah.
I mean, because I could go out here and idle around for days and hours and not catch one. So I was like,
now, do you take your big boat out there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you wanted to draw attention or not. That's what I was asking. So.
Well, no, we went out. We went on a Saturday, so it was like us and 10,000 of everybody skied and ran a pontoon boat, and we didn't get killed, because it was like a big track meet there that day. But there really wasn't a whole lot of people. About 10:30, 11 o'clock, I noticed everybody leaving, and we were still there. And then I found out why. So
yeah, you get run over real quick.
Right.
Awesome.
Oh man. Oh, let's see.
Well, before we move on, guys out there, if you got any questions for Terry, leave them in the comment section and hit the like button for us. We really, really appreciate that. And I wanted to pivot real quick onto crankbaits and grass fishing. The tour event you won was on Rayburn.
Uh-huh.
And you were primarily, I think most of your fish came in, cranking deeper grass. And you mentioned Egypt. We've got some other lakes around here that have grass. And how do you approach, cranking that deeper grass like that?
Well, number one or number two, one thing you got to remember is I caught most of those fish on a DT10, a 14, and a 16. Now, all those crankbaits have a very tight wiggle. And one thing they do is they will shed grass relatively easily. But whenever you're cranking grass, the big key is to understand how deep your crankbaits run. Like a DT10 doesn't run 10 foot, kind of contrary to popular belief. It runs a little less than 10 foot, I mean, it will run 10 foot if you make a long cast and on 8-pound line, but on 12-pound fluorocarbon, it's going to run 9, right in there. But understanding how deep your baits run and then utilizing, I was upsizing my line at times, not using fluorocarbon, but using monofilament line to get the bait to run at different depths. So depth is key with grass is you want it to run just above the grass. You don't want it digging down into the bottom because then it's going to gob up around the bait and it's going to pull up the roots and your bait's not going to run. You're not going to get a bite. So a lot of the key is to have a good bait that sheds grass, has a fairly tight wiggle, sheds grass well, and understand how deep the top of the grass is. When you idle over it, if the grass is 7 foot, well, then you probably don't want to throw a DT16. Understand what depth where you want that bait to run and understand kind of how to do that. And one thing you can do, and I tell people this a lot, nobody really, a lot of days when you're out there fishing and say you're having a day and, things just aren't going your way or the fish aren't biting, a lot of times go pull up in a bay and take your favorite deep diving crankbait. Say, if you think you got a 20-foot running crankbait, go out there in a bay that's flat, find 20 feet of water and throw it and see if you can hit the bottom with it. And then if not, move up to figure out this brand of bait. Okay, this bait, I can get it to 20 foot. This bait, I can only get it to 18 foot. This bait, and with the setup that you have, the rod and reel, and learn how deep your baits will run.
Yeah, it's a good point.
That's really good advice because that's something I'm wanting to get into a little more. My crankbait game is pretty weak. I mean, I'm proficient with a square bill and a DT6, and I throw a rock crawler, spur rock crawler a lot, that wiggle work kind of bait. But as far as actually targeting that deeper grass and trying to tick the tops of it, that's something I'm wanting to definitely work on, early next summer probably. I try to pick out a new technique every year and try to work on it just so I can get familiar with it.
It's something else when you're, just like not just grass, but whenever you're cranking, say, brush piles, deeper brush piles, whatever it might be, you always want to barely try to hit the top of the brush pile. You don't want to dig down to the bottom, because what happens is a lot of times what's going to happen is the bait's going to, when it goes to go up over the brush pile, it's going to turn a lot of times and hang itself. So the key to that, whenever you're fishing cover, and that's one thing that David Fritz taught me a long time ago, is being able to come just above or just over the top of that cover and get those fish to come up and react to that bait. And I see that a lot. One thing I did learn on Live Scope is you can pull up to those brush piles and you can throw your jig out there a lot of times. And if you can keep that crappie jig above them, you'll watch those fish just dart out there and eat it. But a lot of times if you get below them, they won't come down to get it. So, I mean, a bass will, don't get me wrong, but seems like a lot of times if you can just stay just above those fish or make it deflect or do something to come up over them, you're a lot more likely to get a bite.
Yeah, that makes complete sense.
I've got one guy in here asking about the Rapala Ox Garage Cranks.
Yeah. That's a new bait that'll be out. Should be, probably here in the next, probably going to be available online, I think, here coming up in December, here shortly. I can't remember the date on that. It's a flat-sided bait that Ott Defoe kind of did. It was actually the old DT flat, if you remember that bait. It was that body style. And Ott actually took the bait and put the computer chip board bill, did some work on it. And it's a real tight, it's a bigger, flat-sided bait, but it's heavy. You can actually throw it. It's a great bait as far as castability. A lot of flat-sided baits, you got to have a spinning rod to throw them.
Yeah.
This one here you can throw easily with any bait casting rod and reel, but it's got a real tight action, and it'll be a really good cold weather bait.
Now, is that going to come in several different depth zones, or is it just one?
Right now it's just coming in one right now.
Okay. Is it like that 5 foot zone, 5 to 7 foot?
I think it's a 5 to 7 is what it is.
Okay.
But
Bass Guy 1960 says he's wondering about your color selection for crankbaits and what colors under what conditions.
Man, that's a tough one. I'm a big chartreuse and black guy. I've got to have a chartreuse and black or chartreuse and brown. I've always been fond of that, especially in off-colored water, anytime in the spring or fall. Probably if you give me a chartreuse and black, chartreuse and brown, usually in the fall, a lot of times I'll lean more back towards a pearl with a black back, a shad base bait. But I'm usually not that picky. And then and if you give me a red and a spring crawl, I'm usually pretty good. Give me a white bait, a chartreuse bait, and a red one or a spring crawl, and usually that's that kind of covers most of it for me. I mean, I do have some kind of little funky colors that I like here and there, and for specific lakes or times of the year. But I try to keep my colors pretty simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that demon color. I mean, everybody likes that DT6. That's a pretty good one in the spring.
Demon's hard to beat. I mean, it's a good red. It's a bright, dark red that plays well, shows up good in off-colored water, but it's a great spring. But it works in clear water too. It works good, in the spring.
Yeah. Terry, Ron said if you ever need a place to stay at Egypt, just let him know anytime.
Ron lives over there on Lake of Egypt.
I know. I was, I only got to go one time in June, and my wife, she's from Golconda, and from Southern Illinois, and we were talking about we were going to go back, and then I was going to go to Kincaid's, got all the grass. I was going to go up there this fall, and we make all these plans, and then we don't seem to have time to do them. I did make it to Egypt. I did make it to Kincaid, but I will make it there next year.
Yeah, Kincaid. That's one of our holes we fish quite a bit. It's a nice lake.
Yeah, I meant to get up there in September. I didn't do it, and but I will make it there. I will make it there next year. Mark my words.
About mid October is when that grass starts getting real good over there on Kincaid. So
yeah,
just put that in your pocket. That's a good time to get up there. That grass gets really matted, and
yeah.
usually if we get a fall where we haven't had a lot of rain and the water level comes down, that mat, those mats, that grass kind of starts laying over, and it can get really, really good. You can have some really good days up there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, especially for I don't know, that's my favorite spinnerbait hole. So
Spinnerbait.
Oh yeah, it's actually Tackle Junkies on here. We fished over there one day, and we wrecked them pretty good on spinnerbaits.
Oh well, then then I'm most definitely going then.
Yeah, it's well worth it to back some of the coves. Yeah, I'm trying to read through all these comments, but I got a bunch of guys from Florida complaining about having to put a coat on.
No. Yeah, my mother just got to Okeechobee tonight. She's out of here. She said she was done with this. And
that's some pretty good timing there for her.
Yeah.
What do you talk? Let's talk about spinnerbaits real quick. Fishing those. A lot of guys around here are starting to fish those deep brush piles with a big spinnerbait, and I know that's something that's been. What is that a secret? That's not a secret.
I can't keep anything on this channel.
That's been a staple down there at Kentucky Lake. The ledge fishing, slow rolling those big spinnerbaits and stuff. What do you, as far as blade size and head weight and all that? Say you're fishing a ledge that's, the side of it's in that 15 to 20 foot zone. What's some of your recommendations on those deeper spinnerbaits?
A 3/4 ounce works well to about, once you get to about past 20 foot, you kind of lose some of the, really, I tell everybody, if you want to go 20 foot or beyond, you better go to a 1 ounce. But that say 9 to 17, getting close to 20, that's where a 3/4 ounce shines. You can go with a couple different variations. I've the standard one we used for years and years when I was in college and was a 3/4 ounce double willow leaf, a number 3 and a 5, and then a Colorado willow, with a number 5 willow leaf. So it just depends what you're going for. If you got a little bit of color, a little bit of stain, I like both of them. The Colorado willow you can kind of manipulate, whereas a double willow leaf, it's just more of a slow roll type bait. And But with a Colorado willow, what you can do, you can slow roll it, but what you can do is you can actually fish that bait like a drop bait. You can actually, when you pull it over those brush piles and things of that nature, here my dog's going to make an appearance here. Chloe, you want to be on YouTube? You want to be on YouTube? Chloe says it's cold outside. She's got her coat on. See?
That's great.
See?
You look like a giraffe.
Nothing like a bird dog with a coat. See?
It's good. Yeah, we put the little sweater on. I got a little schnoodle. It's a little 13-pound dog. And my girls, I got twin 12-year-old daughters, and they love to put that little sweater on that dog. I kind of feel sorry for the dog. I don't think she likes it. But.
My wife got Chloe Christmas pajamas too, and she doesn't seem to mind them one bit. So, but what you can do with that Colorado willow, what you can do is you can reel that bait and you can actually stop it and kill it. And when that bait falls, that willow leaf will stand straight up. And a lot of times those bass, that's what they'll prefer. Like if you come over that brush pile with a straight, steady, slow roll and you don't get a bite and you do that, a lot of times what you can do is when you feel that bait start to come up on that brush, speed it up and cause it to hit the limb and shoot up. And then when you do, just kill it. And just like you would fish a spinnerbait at night. And just watch your line as it falls, and that Dan Moorhead taught me that years ago when we were both throwing spinnerbaits back in the 90s, and and a bunch of us were here. We were all trying to keep it secret, and we were all doing something a little different. And Dan was really good about getting those fish to react to it, like when they wouldn't just bite that straight, steady, slow roll retrieve. Dan was able to manipulate those Colorado willow type spinnerbaits and at times get some fish to strike that wouldn't just, bite on a straight retrieve.
Okay. Jay's got a question. He wants to know, are you using a trailer hook when you're fishing that deep 3/4 ounce or 1 ounce spinnerbait?
No, never. I never throw a trailer hook. Only
And
time I
people-
throw a trailer, only time I throw a trailer hook is if I'm up north fishing for smallmouth or burning a spinnerbait for spotted bass or something. Yeah, but when it comes to slow rolling it, if he's he's either going to get it or he's not, and if he's the right kind of bass that you're looking for, he's going to get it. Don't worry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So do you put any kind of plastic on that spinnerbait?
I do. I always throw a trailer. Always throw a trailer. I've got an old trailer that I throw. It's an old Harville. It's about a 4-inch ribbon tail trailer. It's a small diameter ribbon tail worm. It doesn't add a lot of buoyancy to the bait. I mean, it gives you some bulk, some profile, and some action, but it doesn't doesn't give the bait a lot of lift. You
Yeah.
know.
I know I see a lot of guys trying to use paddle tails, small paddle tail swim baits like that, and I never have cared for it. I just, like you just said, it gives it way too much lift in there.
It's hard to keep one deep. Now, if you're fishing up in a couple feet of water, that paddle tail's fine, but if you're trying to get that bait down there and keep it down there in that 15, 17, 18 foot zone, I mean, now if you're throwing a 1 ounce bait, yeah, you could probably get by with that paddle tail, but a 3/4 ounce, it's probably going to keep that bait up and a little bit too high.
Yeah.
So are you keeping your trailer pretty much the same color as your spinnerbait, or do you have any kind of different variations to it?
I keep everything, try to keep it pretty simple, white, chartreuse, trailers. I don't do anything real fancy with them.
Yeah.
But I think 99% of the time I'm throwing chartreuse and white with a white trailer or, some variation of white.
Mm-hmm. And do you prefer all silver, or do you mix up the gold and the silver on your blades?
I always contrast. Always, if you go silver and gold, you get more flash. Mm-hmm. Especially when you're fishing at depth. And also another thing, smooth blades don't have as much friction, like where hammered blades, it's harder to get a hammer. A hammered blade will have more lift than what a smooth blade. So when you're fishing deeper, I always want to go with smooth blades.
Okay. Bass Guy wants to know, are Harville baits still being made? He said he loved the chicken foot worms.
Exactly. Yes, the chicken foot worms. That's going back to old Smithland Pool days there.
I don't miss that place.
Yeah. Actually Harville got bought out by Lucky Strike, and they have all those molds. And actually the spinnerbait trailers that I have, several years ago, of course, Guido Hibden passed away, but I had Guido go find the mold there in Missouri, and he actually poured them for me and for me and Dan Moorhead, and brought them to us. So Lucky Strike owns the mold, but I don't think they're producing them or selling them now.
Okay. That's a little bit of good history there. We got any more questions we need to ask?
Let's see here.
I was going to talk about jigs for a little bit.
There's still these guys complaining about being 39 Okeechobee, but it's not quite our 20 degrees we're getting here tonight.
Yeah, but those Florida strain, they shut down. It's cold down there. You get really, really tough down there.
Let's see here.
That's cool that that you went to Egypt, because that's a lake that we frequent a lot, and it's nice to know you've experienced some of the stuff up here. I don't know your history as far as where you grew up and where all you fished at in Southern Illinois, but I know you mentioned Smithland Pool. That's an Asian carp deal now too. Unfortunately, that whole anything that touches the Mississippi River is full.
Oh
of
yeah. We haven't been up 2 years, I bet.
Yeah, it used to be really good, and I can remember back in the 90s and stuff when we would be off limits here on Kentucky Lake for those. We used to have off limits for all those big Everstart tournaments and stuff, and we would go to Smithland because usually about the time the fish were starting to kind of think about getting out on ledges. That's when the fish were really spawning there on the river, and man, we'd go up there in Bayou Creek and flip and catch lots of bass and catch some nice ones. And I know it's not as good as it used to be, kind of like a lot of the rivers and things the Asian carp have been in. But, man, it used to be a lot of fun to go up there and fish.
Yeah. Hank wants to know if you plan to fish the BPT in the future.
Well, I guess that depends if I get an invitation or I qualify. I'm kind of on the fence about that. I've watched the format. I'm kind of a more, I'm a more fish for 5 to 8 bites kind of guy. So I kind of wonder sometimes if I would fare very well in that format because I like to throw stuff with skirts on it, like jigs and spinner baits, big stuff. So I don't know. I would like to experience it I think I would probably struggle just because I have trained myself living on Kentucky Lake to fish for bigger bass. And so I don't know how I would fare in that format.
Well, they make a little skirted Ned rig or a skirted shaky head.
No, no, I couldn't do that. That's no.
This is the argument we have all the time, back and forth.
Yeah, he's more of a. I like to get into that finesse stuff from time to time, just to get some bites. And
I'm definitely more of the jig and the spinnerbait guy.
Yeah, he's punching out Tungsten in the match.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well,
let me ask you a couple more questions here before we let you go. Talk a little bit about jigs and trailers in the fall.
Yeah,
I know the time we fished together, you caught the big bass on a jig, and that was in September. What's your thoughts about? Do you tend to stick with the same type of trailers all year long, or do you make a change sometime in the fall?
I stick a lot with the chunks, but there's a funny story. I've always been a big chunk guy, and I fished the super tournament this year out of Paris Landing, and my co-angler caught a limit behind me on a jig.
Wow.
Do you know how many I caught on a jig? 0. And he whooped me on a jig, and I was so mad. And he was throwing a rage crawl trailer, and I was throwing the normal chunk trailer that I've had so much success with. And finally, after he set the hook on about the 5th one, I was like, man, what the hell are you throwing? And this kid just beat my brains in, and actually he went on to win the tournament. So I was really happy for him. But I realized sometimes I might be a little hard-headed with my chunk trailer, and for some reason those fish are really they were around those brush piles feeding on brim, and I guess they just like that action. But I tend to, a lot of times, I would throw like the crawl type trailers a lot of times earlier in June and twin tails, and then as I moved later into the summer and they'd been fished for harder, I would go to the chunk trailers. But I've always been a big plastic chunk fan. There's all these young kids tell me they're old school chunks because apparently I'm old school now. But of course, back in my day, that's all we had. We had something pork rinds, and if you run down the lake too far, it'd shrivel up on your hook. You couldn't even throw it anymore. So
yeah, you have to take side cutters to get it off.
I've kind of learned this year. I'm a little bit hard headed on my trailer selection. I need to, apparently add a little more flavor to it, especially, but. I got whooped this year by a crawdad trailer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that rage crawl's a good one, man.
It is a good trailer.
That's probably about 80% of mine.
Yeah, the pack of chunks, another good one.
And the pack of chunk I like because it stands up.
Yeah,
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, my wife had a question before I left the house. She saw this little sheet I had with some questions on it for you, and she kind of snuck in the kitchen and wrote a little question down. So she was wondering how do you deal with losing or having a bad tournament? The mental practices that help keep things in perspective.
Well, I mean, I had a really great 2019, and my 2020 started out pretty good, and then I had really actually with the worst tournament this year that I've had in probably 15, 20 years, and man, I don't know. I think a lot of times, a lot of times I think you can kind of try too hard. Mm-hmm. And the key is to, the old saying, you're only as good as your last tournament. So, a lot of times I think you can try too hard. You can put too much thought into it instead of just going out there. And I always joked, Rob Newell that used to write for FLW, now for MLF, we joked about the fact I say, the key is to not care. When you go out there fishing, don't care if you catch one. Because sometimes you can care too much. And the more you care, I think the more pressure and tensions and things of that you put on yourself. So a lot of times I think it's good to get a good kick in the pants to have a bad tournament. But dwell on it. Try to let it go, put it behind you, and just try to start over fresh and just kind of be, I've been very blessed to get to do what I've done for as long as I have. And I never thought I'd make it a year or 2 years. So, you got to have a little good fortune, but also you got to try to keep a good attitude. And I've been guilty as anybody at times about getting down and beating myself up, but you can't do that. You can't do that because I don't care who you are, you're going to have a bad tournament. It's going to catch up to you, but don't overthink it and go out there and try to have fun. And like I said, my goal was always try to act like I don't care. The less I care, the better I do. And I'd make a cut and I'd come in, I'd be doing really good. I'd make the cut and I'd come in, I'd have like 3 pounds and I'd walk by Newell and Newell goes, "You started carrying, didn't you?" And I said, "Yep, I started carrying today." So,
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. That's good sound advice, man. Yeah. It's, fishing is, especially tournament fishing. We fish a fair amount of tournaments here locally. And it's an ever learning process of finding the fish, and the fish are just constantly, fish are just being fish. So they're hard to count. It's,
right.
You got them figured out, and boy, they humble you real quick. So it's,
that's right.
Just over and over and over. So, well, I guess that's all we got for you, Terry. We're gonna let you go. Do you have you got any sponsors or social media places we could find you? You want to talk about, or
what? Everybody can follow me on Instagram and Facebook, TerryBoltonFishing.com. You can go take a look at me there, and on Facebook, Instagram. Like I said, I've got a lot of great sponsors: Zoom, Ranger Boats. I got a lot of great sponsors. Rapala, a lot of them I've been with for a long, long time. Next year we're going to have, we're going to have some changes next year. You're going to see some new things from me, sponsor wise. So, I can't really say a whole lot till January 1st, but, I want to thank, I would thank all my sponsors, that have been with me, and even the ones that aren't with me anymore, because they all made me and allowed me to do what I love to do. And, and all the sponsors that take part in the sport so that we can all fish bass tournaments from everything from a weekend level to a national level. They're all very important.
Yep.
Great.
Yep. Okay. And I did put all your Facebook, your Instagram, even the FLW page, everything. I got it all linked down in the description for everybody. So anybody wants to go to any of that, check him out, give him a like on all of that stuff. It's down in the description for everybody. So
well, Terry, I appreciate you coming on here. It's good talking to you.
Yeah. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah,
no problem.
We'll talk to you later.
All right.
All right.
Take care. Stay warm. All right.
Okay. Yes, sir. You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. So that was definitely an awesome little deal there. Lots of good information.
Yeah. Sorry, Stan. I just saw your comment about asking a couple of his favorite jig colors. I know when I fished with him, he had that black and blue jig on, and he had a black chunk just like he was talking about.
He said to keep that secret, I thought.
Black and blue. I think that secret's out. And it was working for him. I remember the spot where he caught that 5.7. I think it was a 5.7. It was the big fish of the super tournament. Was a spot, and I forgot to ask him about this, but it was a spot that he had went to, and we didn't get bit. And later on in the afternoon, he said there's a stump right here. It was just a little sneaky spot. It was a little high spot out off the bank. I'm not sure if there's a little ridge or maybe a little hump or something, but he knew from years and years of past fishing there that there was a stump or two there. And we hit it, nothing, didn't even catch a small fish. He said, we're going to come back to this later on in the afternoon. And we swung back through there about 3 or 4 hours later. And I think on his second cast, he just bowed up. And so here I am. The fish jumps. Those fish in Kentucky Lake, they always jump. They come up in deeper fish. And he got it up and he's fighting it. And I'm sitting here with the net. I'm like, oh God. I do not want to. You just want it to go.
You don't want to knock it off.
I don't want to knock this fish off. That's one thing when you're in the back of the boat, you always want to help your boater out. And every fish is critical in a tournament. And everything happened just perfectly. Sucked that fish up, got it in the net. But I was wanting to ask him about checking a spot more than once throughout the course of the day and trying to time those fish when they move up, because that's something that happens all the time. Is if you've got a good area, say you got a good point, you got a good hump, you got a good creek channel bend or something, you know that fish use that sometime throughout the course of the day. It's real important to go back and check that a couple different times, especially if you know they're using it that time, within the last couple of weeks or something. Because a lot of people will just fish down through it and they won't even think about it. But that happened to me Sunday in that tournament. I fished this little brush pile. I knew there was bait in that whole area, and there's fish using that area. I could see some big returns and tons of shad there. Why wouldn't they be there? And we fished this deeper brush pile out there, about 15, 16 foot. And I know there were fish around there. I just felt like there should be fish there, no bites. And so we went and fished a little bit more, and we came back through there and ended up catching one of our overs right there. I think it was the biggest fish we had. It wasn't huge or anything, but bottom line was I checked that spot the second time, and there was a fish that had pulled up, and we were using that. So it's real important to check that high percentage stuff multiple times throughout the course of the day.
I know you weren't reading all this, but evidently Aaron's busy feeding his dog treble hooks over here.
Nice. We got Hellabass is on here. What's up, Hellabass? I saw Tackle Junkie on here earlier too.
Yeah, he was. I don't know if he's still on here or not. I did see him.
So, all right, man. Jay, congratulations, buddy. He had I can't remember what exactly tournament that was, but he's had some pretty good tournament success lately. So congratulations.
Yeah.
Morrison Sons. Check out some of his stuff. He's been posting some plastics on Facebook. He's doing a really good job, getting some really good colors. Thanks, Hellabass, for a good show.
We'll showcase a couple of them when we get them in. So
yeah, so I guess we'll let you guys go. As far as next week, I don't have a guest lined up yet, but I'm working on that, and we'll do some social media posts.
I'll say we may have a good one coming.
Yeah, we've got
another good one.
We got 2, 3, maybe 4 guests that you're really gonna like. It's just getting the schedules to link up. So we're working on it. We're trying to keep these guests coming because this is a lot of fun. We learned a lot of stuff, and it was really nice to have Terry on here. Appreciate him coming by and sharing some time with him.
Try to stay ahead of everybody else in the live stream world.
Yeah,
I know we're a little bit more of the middle class, or not middle. Middle age.
Yeah, we're scraps.
Road, but that's all right. We like to keep it that way. We'll stay away from all the.
There you go. Hellabass is having Panger on Wednesday night.
What?
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, and guys, if you're looking for some more live stream content, go check out Hellabass. He's had some really good live streams. I really enjoyed that, Rich. He's got a podcast too, which I've been listening to the podcast format, so I don't drain so much of my my data off my phone. I only get so many gigs a month or whatever. But he had Gary Dobbins on, and he had Pat Schlepper, I think. 2 good guests. His last couple of live streams. Those are really good streams. You did a really good job on that, Rich.
Still working on Luke Duncan.
Yeah, we're gonna get Luke Duncan in there. We're getting close. We're working on it.
It's gonna be a low budget live.
8 or 9, he says. Hellabass. Go check that out if you guys aren't doing anything. So that's all we got for you guys. Really appreciate you sticking with it. I hope you enjoyed that. And we will see you next Monday, 7:30 Central.
Yep. See ya.